Okay, I think it's time. Um, so, welcome everyone to the IETF 123 ACME session. Um, we have a new co-chair. Mike has stepped up. Thank you, Mike. Um, Mike will have to leave midway through this session because he has a conflict with PQIP, and the PQIP talk was scheduled before Mike was in working group chair, so the usual ways the IETF has of deconflicting didn't work. All right, so um, this is the note well, even though it's only Tuesday. I believe you've seen this a couple of times, so it applies. And we've been discouraged from explaining it, so it says what it says. And all of this is a continuation of the note well because we couldn't get the font even smaller to include this thing as well. This is all about professional behavior and lack of harassment. Some meeting tips: make sure you sign in, whether it's from remote using your data tracker ID or in person with the QR code. And we really, really recommend using one of these because MitaCode doesn't work very well with the computer mics. So there's the agenda, the MitaCode information, and technical assistance. Okay, so our agenda. We're doing the administrivia, note well, and that's what we're doing right now. We have scribes. Is there any agenda bashing? Not everyone at once, so no, we don't. Okay.
I do actually have an agenda pass, which is could we put auto discovery first so that I can go to PQIP? And I would also ask the ACME RAS being this that Peter be able to present also because I'm an author on that.
I mean, I put it at the top of the non-new ones, and there's only one presentation before. I think that's okay. Good.
Works for me. Yep.
Right. Okay, so we'll go over document status, and then there's just one presentation because we didn't get any slides about device attestation, and then there's ACME client and some things that are not currently working group documents. Right, so document status. So we've had a dry spell, no new RFCs since September 2023, and we've finally broken it. In June, we've published two new RFCs. There's ACME renewal information, also known as ARI, which is now RFC 9773. And there's ACME extensions for Onion, Tor, or ACME Onion, various names, which is now RFC 9799, sorry. So thank you, Aaron Gable. Thank you, Q. DTN node ID went through the yet another last call and ISG ballot, and it's now finally in the RFC editor's queue. Or it's not really finally, it's again, because it had already been there. ACME integrations still in the RFC editor's queue, still waiting on a misref since July of 2023. We're still waiting for Anima Brewski Cloud to be published, and we don't know when that happens. I don't see Michael Richardson running to the mic. Okay. ACME client, we've had, after a period of no updates, we've now had 4 revisions in May and June, and we have a presentation, so not much to say about it during document status. Oh, now Brandon Weeks is saying in the chat that he does have an update. Well, he didn't send any slides. Okay. So device attestation, there's a new revision, and we have a presentation slot. We don't have slides. So we'll see what we do with that. And DNS labeled with ACME account ID challenge. So there's a new revision from May. There's a new author, Dennis Chariton, and no presentation today. No slot was requested and no slides were sent. So Brandon, do you want to say something? I don't know if you're remote.
Yep, I'm remote. Hello from world's smallest hotel room in London. Yeah, sorry about not sending slides. There wasn't a ton to put on them, but there is a few new adopters. So the previous adopters at the last update was Apple, Small Step, a certificate authority, and I think that was it. There is now Instant ACME, a Rust client. Keyfactor has announced in-development support for EJBCA. Microsoft has announced in-development support that was supposed to launch at the end of 2024, but I can't find any public documentation. So I followed up with Microsoft to see if they have that. And Circardo has a product called Cert ACME that has added support as well. There's also been feedback that has been posted to the GitHub, but not the mailing list. So I know the question to the chairs is, in previous meetings, the challenge here is no one is posting anything to the mailing list. So what would be the next, like, should I repost people's GitHub comments to the mailing list? Should I reach out to people privately and encourage them to participate actively? Should I have straw man arguments of myself on the mailing list?
I don't really like reposting from GitHub. It's better to send a message to the list. Hey, look, there's this discussion in GitHub. Here's the link.
I would give a slightly different answer, which is you as author, if you think there's a change necessary, then you post a new version and announce what the change was.
Yep.
If the person feels their feedback is going unanswered, then maybe they need to escalate to the list.
Yeah, the feedback came in after the document upload window closed for this IETF. The 04 draft does address your feedback from whenever the last meeting was that this was discussed, and now references rats as the thing that is coming that is not there yet, that should probably be used.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, let's get the discussion at least referenced in the list. So we have a sort of single source of truth, or at least a single index of the sources of truth.
Okay. And then aside from that, anything else I need to do to move this forward?
If you think it's close enough to done, we could do a working group last call if you think we're there.
Yeah, aside from
not
some
putting you on the spot. I
wordsmithing.
mean, you can think of that for a week or so.
No, I think it's ready for at least the working group to comment at this point. We should move forward.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so that does it for document status. Next, we have presentations, and the first one is from Kathleen, if I remember correctly. Yes. Is Kathleen in the physical or virtual room?
She's here. She's coming. Do you want to pass her the clicker? Do you want to do the slides, or do you want to pass her the clicker? She says no, you can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do it.
There you go.
Thank you. Good morning. All right. So the ACME client challenge type, it just defines a couple of, or 3 challenge types. If you want to advance to the first slide. So the 3 challenge types added here are one-time password, PKI, WebAuthn. I did get a number of reviews between meetings, and I think at the last meeting, the reason I refreshed this was that some discussion of PKI as used for challenge type was discussed. So I thought, okay, well, this is already an adopted draft. Let me just repost it and see if we could shape it up and ship it out and get this done. And so basically you use these challenge types. They might be that these types of credentials could have either in-person or no identity proofing, because you don't have to have identity proofing with credential issuance. It depends on the account type and the policy type. And so my introduction on that is probably too long, but I thought at the time when I wrote it that it would be helpful to this audience, because you might not be in the identity space and you might not know that sometimes there's no need for identity proofing, like your Facebook account has no identity proofing. And the correlation to this, there might be some instances where you don't need that identity proofing. And it's for the challenge type to set up the initial issuance. So then you can have the automated updates after that for the certificate types. And ACME, the protocol itself, allows for different certificate types to be requested. And so back in 2019, this was, I think this all made sense. And now because ACME has been, just really used for TLS, it took some of the people who have been using this a little bit to get up to speed, just because of how they viewed ACME versus those of us who were there. And I'm seeing that discrepancy in conversations because I've been going around to figure out who would find this useful, right? So if something's not useful, it shouldn't get published. If it is useful, let's just get it done. And so that's kind of what I'm looking to see here from the group, is to figure out, I did hear about a couple of implementations of this. I am not implementing this. I had done it because I thought ACME, like originally ACME was wrapping up. I think it'd be useful to have these challenge types so that they're working group reviewed before they get published, rather than trying to do something out of cycle. And so that was part of the motivation for it. So I am interested. Are others interested in these challenge types? Might they use them in some way? And knowing that your certificate type 2 can be separate from your challenge type. And then in the last review, and thank you very much, Mike, for your review, he raised some questions like, can we just remove the document signing and the digital signature specification, because it is flexible. You don't have to specify it. And that question really goes to the working group, because somebody actually requested that I add the document signing, or yes, the document signing in the last review cycles. So those are my open questions, just to see, can I shape this up and can we ship this out if it's useful?
What questions? It's cute.
Hello. Okay, I have two opinions. One on the challenge type. So you define a WebAuthn challenge type in this, but it seems the previous draft also attempts to define a WebAuthn based challenge type for the device attestation. So are they?
The other, okay.
Yes.
So I don't know. Mine has been around for a long time.
Okay, it might be
probably
that we
predated.
Yes, it might be that we move the WebAuthn to that draft, or some coordination is required that we don't accidentally define WebAuthn twice.
So Brendan Weeks is doing that. Okay.
I think so, yes.
All right, Brendan, let's coordinate.
And the other one is, so the digital signing, code signing stuff, that might be better in an appendix as just an explanation of the motivation for this and how you might want to use this, but a non-normative appendix.
Okay, great. So the text is useful to maintain just in an appendix.
Just to like give context for why this document exists, because then you will answer some, hopefully, of the inevitable "why does this exist" questions.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you for the feedback. Anything else?
Mike.
So with chair hat on, I'll point out that the working group has a milestone dated July 2024 to send this document either to publication or to abandonment. So how do we move forward to decide if it's time to publish or if it should be dropped, if there's is not sufficient interest to drop, is a possible outcome here. And how do we reach that decision? I'm a new chair, so I went through the mailing list archives. I went through the minutes of the 2019-2020 era. And it's not clear to me that there's overwhelming consensus. So I posted a thread on the ACME mailing list yesterday, essentially asking the running code question, the rough consensus question and the running code question separately. So I would really like to see both of the regular sort of ACME core working group members, what is the opinion on this draft? And then separately, who do we have lined up as implementers? What is the running code status of this draft? And I think getting concrete answers to those two questions will help us decide whether and when to progress this draft.
Hi, Mike. Sean Turner. My opinion is Q has provided some input. Kathleen will make those changes, and then you'll always be closing. So your last slide should be, when are we doing a working group last call? And I see it right there. And then we see what happens. If I was unaware that there was a requirement to have certain number of implementations before moving out of the working group, but
it's not a requirement, but this is a proposed standard. And to my reading, it does make a pretty fundamental change to ACME in that it's changing it's changing the nature of ACME in a sense, right? From ACME does inbound identity. I don't know if identity proofing is quite the right word for what ACME does today, but identity proof of ownership of an identifier. And this draft is allowing you to take that out of band and just authenticate the client more flexibly. I read that as a fairly fundamental change to an internet standard. And so I read the proposed standard requirements as not requiring, but strongly encouraging implementation experience prior to publication of the proposed standard.
Okay. I'm going to sit down because I see the queue is forming.
And that's interesting. My view is different from yours. Like, so you're viewing the web and DNS use cases more stringent, whereas I view these types of credentials as more stringent, because whoever you're authenticating to has had to have a policy set for that credential issuance to be able to then automate the process using those issued credentials. And they might require an in-person identity proofing, and that in-person process could even verify like company verification and all of the other pieces that are more stringent when you're talking about something like a code signing certificate. So in my mind, it actually accommodates a much more stringent process. And I mentioned that identity proofing is optional because it is, but whatever CA is doing is setting their policy. And so for those types at the moment, it's typically a much more stringent process.
Right. So with my chair hat on, I'm not trying to have a debate about the content. I'm mostly trying to elicit feedback from anyone other than Kathleen. It's really what I'm trying to do. And given there's a queue, I'll put myself on mute and let that happen.
Okay, so you get muffled at least from up here, so I'm not hearing every word. And then in terms of implementations, back in 2019, DigiCert said, we're already doing this. Then more recently, there was several reviewers. There was 4 different reviewers between cycles. So that's actually pretty good. I just was in another meeting where each document was lucky to have 1 reviewer. So 4 from the last meeting, I think, is pretty good with substantive feedback from several of them. And 2 of them were interested in implementing. There's also a draft that's been submitted that does the PKI credential. So there's another set of authors that were looking for this as well. So I read that as pretty good interest. So that's at least 3 different implementations, including Cisco, DigiCert, and then there was one other, and I can't remember the other, but he's acknowledged in the acknowledgement section. So his company is also interested. So that's at least 3.
Hi, my name is Matt. I'm NCSE, new here. Hi, everyone. I certainly am interested in the workload identity aspect of this. So this is coming from work done into GPP. I put something on the mailing list. Yeah, we've done some work there, and having challenge types where the client can do something, because the client doesn't actually control the identity, isn't the owner, it's just been granted it. So it's something here is interesting to me, at least, based upon that work.
Thank you.
So can you, in the future, enter the queue before you come to the mic? We do have a queue, right? So So Aaron is next in the queue.
Yeah, hey, Aaron Gable. I think my couple apologies, slightly disjointed comments on the draft are one, I think it is very useful to have a bunch of these new challenge types defined at a sort of abstract layer. I think I actually really prefer a system where we say like, hey, yeah, here's a bunch of ways that you can prove a bunch of different things that sort of exist in the abstract, and then things like device attestation or whatever can take advantage of these more generic methods. I'm actually not necessarily a fan of a system where every single use case and every single new identifier comes with 3 new challenges that are specific to that identifier type. I like having generic challenges that maybe work across multiple identifier types. That said, one, I am not aware of any implementations of this. I believe there are things potentially similar to it, but like I would love to see anyone saying, oh yes, here is an ACME server that generates challenges of type HOTP-01, right? And I am fully unaware of that. I would love to be aware of it. And two, the draft feels weighted towards motivations and weighted away from implementation. For example, like HMAC-based one-time password, section 7.1.1, tells me what the challenge looks like, but tells me nothing about what the client posts. Like after the client sees that this kind of challenge is available, what does the client provide to the server to say, okay, I have fulfilled this challenge? And what algorithm does the server follow in order to validate the contents of what the client has posted back? This describes a bunch of potential challenge types to me, but I have no idea how to implement any of these challenge types as either a client or a server, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this information. And finally, I think the last thing that I would really like to see in this draft is suggestions of like what sorts of categories of identifier types these challenges might be associated with. I don't necessarily need this draft to define a bunch of identifier types. In fact, I think it really shouldn't. But the fact of the matter is that the ACME protocol, as it stands today, can only produce challenges in relation to identifiers, right? The reason that external account binding exists as a concept within the ACME protocol is so that you can do some sort of binding of who is this client outside the context of specific identifiers that are going to exist in certificates that that client is requesting. And so I think it's pretty important to be able to say, oh yeah, this is not a mechanism for a client to just generically prove, by the way, I'm the person that your internal identity provider has allocated ID 123. It's a mechanism for a client to say, you should issue a cert asserting that I am client 123. This is not background information. This is certificate contents information. And so having a sense of what kinds of identifiers, what categories of identifiers might care about a WebAuthn identity or a OTP identity or whatever, that might be useful.
Okay, and Nancy, I don't think she's in the room, had offered to help on the IoT use case, and maybe we'd get to some of that with that, and perhaps some of the other interested parties can assist. And I will reshape the document fairly quickly with the high-level feedback to accommodate this type of change if agreed upon, and welcome contributions. And if the chairs want me to have a co-author, that's great too, because we're at the mercy of the working group and the chairs. Thank you for the feedback. Much appreciated.
Yes.
Yeah, Charles Eckel. So apologies because I haven't read the latest version of the draft, but I was working on the same use cases that Matt referred to previously. And I looked at a previous version of this draft and it looked like it could have some nice properties that would be useful, but because it was looked like it had kind of just been sat to the side, we ended up looking at the TK auth method and using a token authority and going that route instead. And I'm wondering,
Oh, interesting.
like how WebAuthn now has kind of gone off and been handled or is being handled in another draft. How much overlap do you see between what was done with TK auth and how, like, why would someone say want to use this approach as opposed to that approach? Kind of the pros and cons. Is that something you've thought about?
I have
haven't
not
read it and come up with that myself. I'm just wondering if others in the room here have thoughts on that.
I had only seen the PKI, and that's why I refreshed this. So I can go back and coordinate. And if it should get dropped, it should get dropped to only be in one place. But if this, generic one, not specific to a use case, is useful, Dean Sachs had also reviewed. So I guess there was like 5 reviews.
Okay.
I'm, totally flexible. It's a working group document, right? Let's shape it up
I don't have
as
strong opinions yet either, so I'll reread it and then see if I do.
that'd be great. Yeah, any comments and feedback to help shape it up would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And TK auth was published in the interim, right? So that's one of the stir drafts that came through here a while ago now.
Okay,
So
great.
Hi, Dave Robin. Is this on? Yes, it is.
Yes.
I have to eat the mic. I just comments generally about the structure of the document, because when it started out, I was reading it and it seemed like a survey sort of document. Here you can do this and you can do that and you might do this and consider that. And then all of a sudden I got down and here's some actual JSON and some actual challenge types identified, and like, whoa, wait, is this an overview survey document or is it an actual protocol document? And
Yeah,
so I
so
was confused by that.
Actual,
And
yep.
so to echo a little bit of what Aaron was saying, I expect more as it relates to the actual protocol, going on. So the question I have is, why is this one document that covers 3 things and not 3 different documents, each one that goes in full depth like all the others? In other words, I see ACME extensions being done one at a time and an RFC one at a time, and each one stands alone. And they're not waiting on each other. You can argue about one, another one can go through to publication. Why put 3 together? That's the main question.
All right. This was back in 2018, 2019.
Right.
That made sense then. If it still does, I mean, from this discussion too, does anyone need OTP? Right? That might get slashed out. Is WebAuthn covered by the other one? Is this just PKI? So I think we're going to figure that out.
That's what I'm saying. If you break it into pieces, then each one stands alone and progresses on its own pace, either to publication or death. But at least they're not holding each other up. That's all. And then the digital signature one could be great all by itself. You don't have to worry about whether it's applicable or whether it goes in appendix. It just stands alone. So
I hadn't viewed it that way when I wrote it. I had my former AD hat on thinking, let's do a concise draft and get this done. And, the ADs might like that because it's less review in the IESG queue for something very similar.
As sort of an overview or a survey of possibilities, that makes sense. But once you start actually defining the challenge types literally, then it feels more like it should be a draft by itself.
All right, well, let's figure out what's useful, not useful. And that's the only time we heard that particular comment. We actually got the reverse of it, that it was nice to have a few challenge types separate from use cases, right? So there's 2 conflicting comments there.
Hi, this is Peter. Following that question, sometimes we have to, in enterprise accessing situations, we might have to use multiple at the same time. So that's probably one of the reasons that could be that why it's good for putting in the same document. That's number one. And number two, from my side, I wrote some reviews from between this IETF and the last IETF.
Thank you.
And for one, that we are interested in implementing it because enterprise accessing using identifications of endpoints and whatever is identifier or posture assessment, that's important for us. We have this kind of portfolio, and that's number two. So number three is that I wrote some reviews and talking about workload service account challenge type. So I didn't know what is applicability on that side. You're saying it's about Nancy. Can you explain that a little bit?
You could establish a mechanism for the key update for workloads as well. I started talking to a few people who do identity work in workloads. So that's a really emerging space at the moment. One of the comments I heard is that it's kind of fragile at the moment for that process. Maybe between this and the next meeting cycle, we'll know more. But they might be updating the keys used, right? So once if ACME were used, then the updates of the actual key used could be every 5 minutes in some of those workload situations. And so it might be useful if you want to have an initial establishment, but you might not want a human in the loop. So that space is still figuring it out. And there are other protocols to allow for those types of updates for workload, but I have heard that it's not perfect. So there is some, like the scale is a problem. Does this solve it? I don't know.
It's okay. Just
Right.
I just want to know.
And I appreciate your collaboration. And also you actually hit the point of why those three were combined in the beginning.
Yes.
Because code signing, you might authenticate to a CA with any one of those. And at the initial review cycles back in 2019, Microsoft DigiCert and others with those particular use cases thought that looked normal to have those grouped.
So that's why I would be happy to see this document proceed. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your contributions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen.
Sorry I didn't allocate more time. I didn't think
There's a lot to cover more in the mailing list. So, Mike, I think you're next. If you're going to talk, you might as well unmute first.
Sorry, I was just replying on the text chat here. Yes. Okay, I'm going to do this very quickly. This document, yeah, I came to the mic in the other business last time. I actually did slides this time. Next slide, please. So just a quick refresher. This pair of drafts was trying to solve the problem that in a cloud service provider, you typically, if my website is hosted by DigitalOcean, let's say, I typically get the choice to just let DigitalOcean get a cert for me, which will almost always be Let's Encrypt, or some commercial CA that my cloud hosting provider has a relationship with, or I get to upload a PEM file. And upload a PEM file is horrible. And if I don't like the choice of CA that my cloud provider used, I get to upload a PEM file. But what about some middle ground where I personally have a relationship with some CA, and I'd like these websites to also be part of my dashboard for managing certs that I use for the rest of my enterprise? Why isn't there a third option here, which is bring your own ACME? Tell my cloud service provider where to go to ACME against my preferred CA. That's the problem we're trying to address here. Next. So, yeah, the problem we're trying to solve, the owner of a website hosted in a cloud service provider, I would like my CSP to use my choice of CA, not their choice of CA. Or, problem statement stated equivalently, as an ACME bot, knowing only the DNS name that I'm trying to request a cert for, be able to discover which ACME server I'm supposed to reach out to. And the core mechanism that we've defined in this draft is to piggyback on top of the DNS CAA record. So as an ACME bot, I can go check the DNS CAA for the DNS name that I'm trying to get a cert for, and that will point me to the ACME server I'm supposed to go reach out to. This has a side benefit that we've also provided a way to rank redundant CAs for fallback. So while we were defining the CA record, we also threw in a ranking mechanism. So you can have multiple CAs at the same level. For example, I could have 3 CAs all specified at level 1, which means the Acme bot can round robin them. Or I could specify a CA at level 1, CA level 2, CA at level 3, and the Acme bot can use those as fallbacks if the one in the number 1 slot was unreachable for some reason. So it's both discovery and we're adding a fallback mechanism which doesn't exist today. The second document that we have here, because this is a 2-document pair, is solving the problem in the other direction, is auto discovery of the clients. I see Aaron's comment, but I'm going to keep going with my slides. So the problem to be solved here is, as a domain owner, I would like to tell my CA the set of Acme account keys that I am authorizing to request certs against my account. And again, there's a separation here, right? My cloud service provider is going to run a set of Acme bots. How do I authorize that set of Acme bots to issue against my account? And today we do this with the EAB binding, but maybe that's not flexible enough. So the mechanism here is we've defined a well-known URI, well-known Acme keys, which is a JWK bundle, or it's supposed to be. I don't think the draft's very clear about that. So as a domain owner, I could then go to my CA and just say this URL, cspcorp.com, well-known Acme keys. Any key in that bundle is authorized to issue against my account. So this is, authorizing with a layer of indirection that allows the CSPs to rotate their keys without causing problems. Next. So this draft is looking for a new owner. I started this draft. I think the draft is fairly mature in the technical content. It has a little bit of technical content still to work out. There's a little bit of technical content still to work out, specifically in terms of who actually is the certificate subscriber. This draft sort of blurs the line whether it's the entity who owns the Acme bot who is actually agreeing to the terms of service, whether it's the domain owner who controls the CAA record who's agreeing to the terms of service. There's some ambiguity there, which is going to cause some lawyer type problems, and we never really got to the bottom of that. But more to the point, this document just needs someone to push it and to sort of manage, get some implementers on board and sort of get this through to the point that it has rough consensus and running code. And if we don't get someone willing to take it over and do that sort of politics work, then I think this draft probably should just be allowed to expire at this point. Is that my last slide?
Yes, it is.
Right. So this is, I put this call out at the microphone last time. I had a couple of people reach out to me privately willing to be authors, but none of them represented a major vendor in this space. So I'm really looking for someone who can really be lead author, who represents either an Acme server or an Acme client that has sort of enough clout to get to really push adoption of this. And if no such person comes forward who wants to adopt it, then I think we just let this expire. And this is the last time I'll present it. Does that seem reasonable?
Sure, and there's a short queue, so.
Yeah, working backwards, I think that conclusion makes sense. I think if there's not obvious appetite for this here and now, then we probably should let it expire. The beauty of expired drafts is that people can still go dig up their GitHub repos and rehydrate them in the future if we discover a need for them in the future. Stepping back a little bit, just because this presentation immediately followed the previous presentation, it's on top of my mind. What about auto discovery for non-DNS name identifier types? What about clients that need to know what Acme CA to use for an IP address for which CAA records don't exist, or for one of the more esoteric identifiers like a DTN node ID or something like that?
Yes, you brought your ocean boiler. Yeah, my answer to that is this draft was specifically targeted at online cloud, like the DNS normal type certs, but we're just trying to let CAs get easier access into closed cloud environments. So that was the very specific target of this draft. So I think your comment is a bit stretching the scope of what we're trying to do here. Q.
Hello. On the running code front, I think when this draft first came up, like in its 0.0 edition, I added a fork to certbot to add support for this. It's some code sitting on my GitHub somewhere that probably needs updating to the changes that have happened to this draft since then, but I don't think it would be difficult to get, it would take me probably an afternoon to get that back up to working state. So I guess we just need a cloud service provider, a CA willing to do the other half of it, because getting the implementation into certbot was not difficult, and it should be fairly trivial to get that merged into certbot.
Right, your Freudian slip there is actually perfect though, because there's 3 entities involved in implementing this: the certbot, the ACME server, and the cloud service provider has to actually turn this on and not block it.
Yes.
Right. This whole thing, in a way, it's doing an end run around the CSP. So they, our CSP is actually willing to give up control over which ACME server their own bots are going to reach out to. So that entity actually is important in the discussion.
Right. Yeah. Here. I guess I'm happy to help push this draft forward, but I am neither a CA nor a cloud service provider. I'm just a person who outputs code that sometimes is of questionable quality. I recognize this is a helpful skill, but I am not the 2 core we need to satisfy. So yeah, I guess we need someone else to come forward.
Is that my turn? Leif Johansson. So I just came up here to note that I don't know whether we're going to get to the OpenID Connect presentation, but we actually put auto discovery in from scratch in that in the draft in that specification for many reasons. And I think that discovery is going to look very, very different for different identity types and identifier types. I don't think it's easy to do, and the economics are going to look vastly different too. Having said that, I think it's a good thing to have, right? Especially for the fallback situation, and for I'm sure there are cloud service providers that care more about data sovereignty who would be willing to support this, as long as we just need to find 1 or 2 of them. But I think they do exist out there. I'll do my best to see if I can find some.
Okay, so thank you, Mike. Let's go to the next presentation, and I guess if people want to take over as lead author, and guess they'll contact either you directly or on the list. Next, we have the extension for public key challenges. Is the presenter in the room or remote?
In the room. He's coming to the mic now.
That's great.
Can you pass him the clicker? No, he has to do it because he's controlling the slides, right?
Okay.
So if you hand control to the slide clicker.
If I could find the button for that.
If you just click on the side clicker, it'll say there'll be a little document that says pass slide control. It's right under Ownsworth. Let's see.
Oh, in the user. No, I see.
Yeah. Let's try it.
All right. Pass slide control. Yes.
There you go. You've got it.
I can control. Okay. Hello everyone. I'm Liang Xia from Huawei. Actually, this is our 0.2 version of this document. And I'm a little bit sorry that we haven't clarified the real problem for this draft. So today, I don't want to waste too much time, but I still want to emphasize or explain again that what is the use case, and we want to solve, and why we want to introduce this public key challenge type in the current ACME protocol. Okay, and I think that's we updated some background and security model. So basically, and we want to introduce the public key challenge in this ACME protocol because we have another new use cases. It's not about the domain name certificate allocation. It's about in an enterprise, in a campus, and we want to automatically allocate some certificate to some some applicant to some client. And this client is not on the ACME client. It's another, it's behind the ACME client. ACME client act like the proxy to this endpoint, like smartphone, like the PC. So that's different from the current ACME design. So, and we found some public key replacement attacks in this scenario. So we want to use a public key authentication, this new type, to mitigate this kind of attack. Okay, so I think this page is very important. And I think all the ACME experts has a very strong opinion that we have to trust the ACME client 100%. But in our use cases, actually, it's not totally like, it's not necessarily like this. Because you can see from the left page, the ACME client for the web, for the current ACME protocol, the ACME client has possessed everything. It has a ACME client credential and the domain name and the corresponding public key. So the ACME server can only trust it because he provides everything. So, and they have the mutual trust between the server and the client. So yes, in these use cases, we definitely have to trust the ACME client. But if you see our use cases, ACME client is in the middle, and the real applicator is behind the ACME client, like smartphone, like the PC, and it won't request his certificate through the ACME client to the ACME server. And in these use cases, actually we have another IDP. This IDP is help to facilitate the applicant to finish his identity validation, identity authentication. So we assume that there's no trust between the applicant and the ACME client, because in sometimes the ACME client is this node is attacked by someone, and someone can replace the applicant's public key, and send it to the ACME server and allocate the certificate to another public key, and that key is not the real applicator's public key. But we have another trust chain from the applicator to the IDP, and the IDP have some exchange information with the ACME server. And you can see I can use some information from the provided by the applicant, like its public key, so that I can assure that when I got the certificate request, the public key is really consistent with the applicator's key. So I think that's a basic problem we want to address. So I think that this page is also try to explain the problem. The problem is happened in the 3.2. This step. This step, if the ACME client, replace the public key provided by applicant and send it to the ACME server, because the ACME server thought that the applied applicant has already finished the challenge, so it acknowledges this kind of public key and it publishes certificate. But this certificate public key is not the real applicator public key. So that's a problem. They are not consistent in these different steps. So we, by introducing the new public key challenge type, so it guaranteeing that the protocol can firstly in the challenge phase, in the second phase, the challenge phase, the applicator provide his public key with his private key signature to the IDP, and the IDP can authenticate it and record its public key, and then share this public key with the ACME server. Then in the final stage, when the applicator through the ACME server to apply the certificate, the ACME server can double check whether the public key is the one that is already authenticated by the IDP. So we finish this trust chain. So we can make sure that they are confident and no public key replacement attack here. Okay, so and this is I don't want to go to many details about the how to. This time I just still want to clarify the use case, but this is our design of the new challenge type and its information. And the last one is, I think, is proposed by some expert here. If we have the public key authentication in current use case, maybe we can skip the final stage. You know, the applicator does not need to request send the CSR to the ACME server to request the certificate, because in the challenge phase, you know, the ACME server through the IDP, it's already finished the public key authentication. So ACME server can directly give the certificate to this public key. So you can skip the ACME third stage. But this may be a big change. So, but it's possible. Okay, thanks. That's all.
Kathleen Moriarty, thank you for the presentation. So in my review of the draft, it looked like this was taking the architecture and design largely from the, I guess, defunct or expired OpenID Connect draft, right?
My understanding is that this is mainly based on the, you know, there's one draft is a device test. It's previously proposed by Cisco. It's
yes,
also,
it's the same draft.
They want to do something in the campus. So we have the same use cases, yeah. But that draft has been expired.
Yes,
so we propose a new
draft.
one, yes.
Yep. So I guess my question too to the chairs and working group, should this and that OpenID Connect or from that other draft come into my draft to condense it, and how do the chairs, you know, if this is useful, because the public key challenge type is added in my draft that's already adopted. Do we pull in this content that was in that Cisco draft previously for OpenID Connect, and how do the chairs and working group want that to happen?
Catherine, I want to respond to your comments. I think we are fine. We just want to solve this problem. So we listen to the chair's arrangement. And I want to say that we have this draft really from our real use case attack scenario in our campus. So we haven't notified, you know, the existing document. So yeah, so we can, you know, we can coordinate on this thing.
Right. We don't want to define this twice. And the challenge type or the architecture comes from the Cisco document. So, you know, I don't know who I acknowledge, who I pull in. Cisco was interested. They're doing this specific for PKI. Cisco's doing something for a few other challenge types. So how we handle this is really, and the chairs might need time to think about, the working group might need time to think about it. But I wanted to raise that in terms of where the content for the drafts was coming from, and the implementations is great because it shows this is needed. And just how do we handle it so that everybody's happy? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Oh, this is a bit low. There we go. That's better. And the microphone fell down again. Never mind. I'll just
You can
kneel.
pull it out.
So I have two main issues with this draft. The first one is, I recognize, ironic coming from someone who works in academia, but the problem stated here seems a little academic.
Why?
I'm struggling to conceive a use case where this is necessary. It would be helpful for us in the working group to have a concrete real-world case where the current protocols have not been sufficient. All that's been described is very theoretical, and like, I recognize in this theory that you have created there may well be a problem, but I don't yet see a real-world case where I would actually ever run into this scenario. The second one is, you discuss, I'm maybe slightly confused by this, but the applicant or the IDP completing a challenge. The thing in ACME is, to send a request to the server, the request needs to be signed with the account key. So therefore, to complete the challenge, you must have possession of the ACME account key. Therefore, you would need to share the account key between the applicant, the IDP, whatever, and the ACME client. at which point the applicant is the ACME client, and therefore there is no need for this as far as I can tell.
I got your point. Yeah, maybe we should consider this. Yeah, this is a problem. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe come back with the version 3, please, that has a concrete real-world case where this was needed.
I think the use case is very clear. I don't have any new content to add. This is use case. But your second question is valid. We will consider
I don't mean the theoretical use case. I mean, please describe how you have used this in a production environment, or well, not production, in a real running code environment.
Have you read my document?
Yes, it doesn't.
This is the latest one.
Okay, it doesn't. Okay, maybe I need to reread it. It's still a bit
please read it.
for me.
In this version, we update a lot about the introduction and background.
Okay.
Yeah, if you start to see this picture, of course, it's very abstract and very high level, but we have the details in the draft.
Okay, maybe I need to reread it because it wasn't immediately obvious to me.
Yeah, please.
David Adrian, Chrome. Not a lot of opinions about this draft specifically, but the general concept of it would be great if the ACME clients, the challenges that they perform, particularly in the web PKI, which is what Chrome is interested in, were more bound to the public key in a way that could be verified by either, for example, a CT log operator or just later downstream. The use case that we see would be like PKI resellers, where like the CA reseller is actually like a customer of some other CA and then has their own customers, will sometimes generate keys on behalf of their customers, which then means that owning their web administration portal and creating their account lets you issue a certificate entirely without controlling any sort of DNS name or anything. Just by owning the web security of the reseller account lets you get a certificate for any other domain. And so actually verifying control of the public key by the CA at that time would prevent that type of attack. But again, this is kind of focused on the IDP case and not that, but just wanted to note that we do see value in binding the public key in the challenge, regardless of your trust in the client.
So sorry, this is a question or?
I just wanted to encourage the concept of binding the ACME challenge to the public key, no opinion specifically on this specific draft.
Thanks for this. When I read it through, the one thing that I have 2 points. One thing that jumped out at me that I highlighted was, and we can just delete the CSR and make it up ourselves. That doesn't,
yes,
if you read Kathleen's document, it's all about key usage. And I mean, CSR is like appears 100 times. I mean, CSR is very important in the request. You don't just throw it away and give me something you created out of whole cloth.
Yeah.
So that was just something that needs justification. And in your slide, you say, oh yeah, we don't need the CSR. So I don't, that blows my mind. I don't understand why.
Yeah,
the CSR is there for a reason.
Actually, that's not my proposal. Actually, that's some idea, during the last 2 discussions from the ACME expert. We think it's potentially possible, but we also think that it's broken the current ACME design. ACME is very good, 3 stages. So I agree with you. If we really want to consider this direction, we need to consider very seriously about, what is potential attack or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't mind validating the public key in the CSR that you got. The very important step if you want, if you care. But don't throw it away. There's important stuff in there. The other one I noticed on this slide that you have right on here now is you said that there's the right-hand side is because you don't trust the ACME client, and yet you have a drawing right there that says mutual trust in green. So this diagram confused me. So are you moving your trust from the client to the IDP?
Yes.
It just seems like you're trading one thing for another. Who's compromised? Why do you not trust the client, but you do trust the IDP?
Because the client is some in our use case is some network device, and it can deploy it in anywhere. Someone can easily to attack it. But for the IDP server, it's a
that's why
centralized one.
Clients authenticate themselves to the ACME server for a reason. I mean, it's not just some out of the blue. It's not the device itself. It's the client, which is known to the ACME server in many cases with a variety of ways. Anyway, your diagram there with the green mutual trust needed some comment because it seemed to be against your premise.
Okay, thank you.
Really quick, the reason I raised my hand was partly to respond to that. This is a discussion we definitely don't have to get into because we have had it before in this working group, but the reason you can get rid of the CSR is that in the ACME protocol specifically, not in other CA issuance systems necessarily, but in the ACME protocol specifically, because of the requirement that the identifiers in the CSR must exactly match the identifiers in the order. In many CAs, the only purpose the CSR serves is a transport mechanism for the desired public key. And you can't do a challenge like this to validate the public key until you can't wait to do that validation until after the CSR is provided, because the order has to be in the valid state, ready to be finalized before the client can even present the CSR. So if the client has already presented and proved, validated somehow the public key that they want to use, then the CSR presented at finalized time carries no new information. And so you can simply drop it because the server already has 100% of the information they need to synthesize the desired certificate. That's all I was going to say here.
Okay, thank you. I think you do have some further slides or something about security model. Is that something we want to present, or are we done?
No, it's finished.
Okay. So
okay,
thank you. And the next one is ACME RATS.
Do you want the clicker?
Yes, please.
I'm gonna give him the clicker.
All right. Then.
I think I did it. Did I do
Let's
it?
see.
Yes, you have it.
Cool. Yes. Wonderful.
Magic.
Thank you.
All yours.
This is Peter from Huawei. So since last IETF, we have done some design meetings, and we want to update some of our decisions and discussions with you. Right. So a little bit of recap. So this draft is about combining the RATS process to the ACME process, such that a endpoint, for example, like a cell phone, when we issue a certificate to them and for them to establish mutual TLS connections, we want to do security checks, like posture checks for these devices to prevent them to access into, for example, enterprise networks. And if they pass the RATS process and they have an attestation result, and then this can be redeemed in the ACME process and be changed and be redeemed as a certificate for them to access internal networks. So that was our first use case to grant internal network access to enterprise employees. The next use case was supplied by Mike. So an ACME server could be a cloud domain host service provider that might want to put a security policy on their ACME clients, like domain owner tenant. So they want to know that if these websites are hosted on top of a secure platform that, for example, have a compliant or secure private key module. These are the use cases. So the changes from the last IETF, we have 2 design meetings. We did some deep dive. We provided a real use case and find out some current practices and did some security analysis. And with these analysis and deep dives, we narrowed down to some tentative but important design choices. So this is a really interesting use case. So this is the use case that we do, right? So we provide enterprise access to campus networks. And one of our customers are a power company, and they have power, power substation inspectors, right? So they have to walk around all of these substations, for example, like tens or even 100 in a week of substations. They have to inspect each one of them. So an inspector must go to one substation and connect to the local Wi-Fi of this specific substation and download log and inspection data from this station and go to the next. Okay, and the thing is, he can do. Let's go to this first. So he can do. The current practices are, they have two ways of doing this kind of access different substation Wi-Fi. There are two ways of doing it. So first thing, you can type. You can always type in an EAP password for Wi-Fi. The problem is very obvious because you cannot remember them all. And a good password management would need rotation. That means usually you have to rotate all of them in 2 weeks, and that's apparently bad. And the second one is that your MDM, your mobile management app can receive passwords of each substation over application layer connections. And then they will do the radius password access on behalf of you. Okay, this is a more prevalent use case. Sorry, the way that they do it. And the problems are also kind of obvious because like the password can be phished from the user side. Vulnerability. It can be leaked during transmission, especially over the public internet, or it can be stolen because your device can be attacked and can be stolen from your phone. And then obviously you don't have MFA, you don't have binding to usual trusted devices like your phone. And then this third one is kind of interesting because if we use ACME RATs, and we do access with certificates instead of just passwords, then you can do some interesting network access control policy control, right? So you can have more fine-grained understanding like who is accessing this substation. It is an inspector, and then you can do RBAC, then you can do ACL, and then you can do some more interesting security policy management. And if you're doing just password, you don't know who is accessing, right? So basically this goes to why passwordless is good, okay? And then we come to some of the design decisions that it's best that this is the two-step process. So in the headquarter, when the inspector is at the headquarter, it should inspect the trustworthiness or the security posture of his phone, his accessing device, and then do ACME RATs and get a certificate. And at the substation, it should authenticate and connect to the Wi-Fi using EAP TLS or tunneled EAP. And then this is like two, it's current design decisions that we find might be a good practice. So the EAP TLS or tunneled EAP have different good and pros and cons. So if you use EAP TLS, then you might have to do, a consortium way to connect the or install the root CA to the substation. And if you use tunnel EAP, then you have to use the EDROAM model. You have to call home, right? So if it's in the enterprise case, then install the company root CA into every substation is kind of okay way to do it. And then your root CA is not going to change for a long time, and only the client certificate is rotating. So coming to these discussions that we have made some tentative decisions, just let us know if you're unhappy with it or happy with it. The first thing is use ACME RATs to get certificate to do access is a good idea out of several reasons that we discussed. And number two is that to at least mandate EAP TLS to be the prioritized way to authenticate and use the certificates. And the third one is to where to put attestation in the ACME process. So we discussed the challenge might not be the right place to carry remote attestation results because challenges are mostly to prove ownership of identifiers. not your, posture attributes. And then we discussed if we, and also if we are trying to prove a lot of attributes, usually the challenge only can respond to one challenge and one identifier. And that's a technical problem. And then we discussed, should we do in the /new account request? And then we discussed that's also a bad idea. And maybe the new order payload is the good place to put the attestation result in. And then you do the verification of the attestation result, and then you do the issuance. So the remaining problems in here we have is the trust assumptions, like how does the potentially external ACME server trust the AR by the verifier? The verifier could be potentially internal, and the ACME server could be potentially external. Should they assume trust relationships? These are some remaining problems to discuss. And next steps is that we are going to continue the ACME RATS design team meeting. And then we have a site meeting of, it's more like a design site meeting today at 7 to 9 p.m. So we know there are multiple drafts that are ongoing to very similar topics or various ways of doing it. So we invite you to go to that site meeting to discuss. And if we are happy with some design decisions, then we hope to call for adoption in Montreal. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for this presentation. It's actually been very informative to understand what the hell you're trying to achieve. So thank you. I have a comment on putting things in challenges and the one challenge thing. Now, I quickly just double-checked the RFC, and there is some poor drafting in the RFC because there are non-BCP 14 shoulds on challenges. So slap on the wrist for whoever wrote that. But all it says is a server should, lowercase, consider one challenge sufficient. There is nothing requiring one challenge to be sufficient. And given your use cases quite divergent from the original use case that ACME was designed for, I see no issue in saying, actually, all three of these challenges have to be completed for this authorization to go through. And a challenge does seem the more natural place to put this from a protocol design perspective, because you're challenging the client to do something.
Yes. About that, so like a attestation result can have multiple claims that usually is more than 3. You could be like something like 7 to 10. So if you do that, in a several back and forth, is that okay with the?
Well, does it need to be like different RATS attestations for every property, or can you just have one? You also need to do RATS challenge and then deal with all that at once.
So we're going to try and pick it up a little bit, or we're going to not get through the agenda for the first time in like 400 years. And so we'll just, a lot of this we can take to the list. Right?
Yes. Okay, cool. I'm happy to take this to the list.
Talk to you. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Next.
Aaron.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar to Q, so I will also take that to the list.
Oh, okay, yeah. And also welcome to join the design site meeting today at 7.
Kathleen Moriarty, I'll make mine very quick. I think this could be useful to have integrity and authentication tied that fits in with zero trust principles. And then secondly, when you get to, this thing is proven as having integrity from the RATS perspective, I think the posture assessment, and you'll see in the next revision of that posture assessment draft, having that as well as the attestation results is being able to convey like a policy was met in your conveyance of integrity, right? So that you're meeting all of the rules for an operating system being secure, for instance, or the firmware being attested.
So you're suggesting to have a policy, like a reference policy to compare with the attestation results?
We can talk offline, but it would tie into the posture assessment draft as well.
All right.
In RATS.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have Chris went, right?
I think I'm clearing the queue.
You're good, yeah. Do you want the clicker?
I think there's only a few slides, so.
Okay, you'll have your change in slides.
Okay, you can go to the next one.
Hi, everyone. Chris Wendt. I brought this draft in at the last 122 meeting as an initial draft. Discussed it in ACME, discussed it also in STIR, got some thumbs up. So we did a few revs. We actually did two major revs of the document. One was to try to holistically make sure everything aligned with what we wanted to align with. The second rev brought in more examples and that type of stuff. It's really a new authority token profile. We have a TNAuth list existing authority token. This is to add to the second extension that's defined in 8226 for STIR certificates, which also was enhanced by 9118, but all under the umbrella of JWT claim constraints in general. Next slide. So like I said, so we're basically defining in this profile the ACME challenge identifier type for JWT claim constraints. It's based on, I already stated, we have the TNAuth list. We explain in the document that in general, for STIR certificates, you're probably going to have a TNAuth list extension. But for some cases, you will want to add a JWT claim constraint. So we're just completing that and adding a new challenge so that you could have two challenges when you're doing your certificate request through ACME, because the authority that's associated with TNAuth list, it could be the same authority that's associated with JWT claim constraints. It could be others, but in either case, they're targeted at two separate extensions that are going to be added to the certificate. So one question to the ACME experts really is to validate that we handled the multiple challenges correctly in the document, because we've gone from 1 to 2. There may be others in the future, but for now, there's 2 that exist in STIR. And I think that's the major issue, the major thing to talk about in ACME. Like I said before, we are also going to talk about this in STIR, to talk about the STIR specifics. There's discussions. I have a draft I'm proposing Vesper that talks about some of the more authority parts of this, but I think that's sort of independent of the mechanics of ACME. Did I have another slide? I forget. Oh yeah. So I don't necessarily need to go through these slides in this room. They're more specific. This is for the STIR discussion. But just to show it, this is what the authority token would look like. It looks very similar to what the TNAuth list one is. Happy to go through it, but I think for considering time, I'll just go to probably the last slide. That I don't. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Next steps. So we'd obviously, well, maybe I'll ask for comments. John, if you have a comment.
Yeah, John Peterson. So we need this. So it'd be great if people here were cool with us doing it. But to Chris's point, I mean, you didn't have the example slide that actually showed the 2 challenges. The example like block, JSON block that showed the 2 challenges. So that's what we need eyes on to make sure that's done right.
Right. Yes.
Correct. But so please look at it.
Thank you, John. Yeah, others that I've heard others supporting it as well. So if you want to speak, Aaron.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the motivation for the draft makes sense. I really like the so sort of fitting the mold of here's a new identifier type, here's a new challenge for that identifier type. If you can complete the challenge, then you can include the corresponding structure in the certificate. Great, perfect, that very straightforward. I've read the entire section about the combination of TN off list and JWT claim constraints, and I freely admit I am very confused by it. I'm happy to have this discussion on the list. I am not sure that given my naive understanding, I don't think that that level of complexity is necessary. I think this is actually very straightforward, but I freely admit that I may be very wrong about that. And so I think we should discuss this more on the list.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. I think we were struggling on how pedantic we needed to be in this draft versus other STIR drafts. But
Hi, Sean Turner. I just want to admit that I'm completely biased because I do stuff in STIR as well, but we do need eyes on it. It is being used. So +1 what did John said.
And just real quick, I know we do need to take this list, but I think the kicker here is that there are potentially different authorities who will vouch for these two different properties of the challenge. That's the problem. That's why we need like 2 authority objects for it. Because one's going to know that it's okay for this person to use this TN auth list. Somebody else is going to know and these are the JWT claim constraints that are appropriate. I don't know if we've done that before in ACME. That's why we want eyes on it.
right, exactly. And that's something maybe to expand more in this draft versus the pedantics of JWT claim constraints, which I will admit are fun.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got 2 more presentations.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
I'd love to adopt this at some point, but we can discuss on the list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can. So you can ask Yoav to change slides. We're going to ask you to be quick if you can.
Yes.
Real quick, there is an agenda item before this presentation. If I'm biased, it's my agenda item, but it is listed in the agenda before this one.
So it is, right. Can we reverse the order because it's so, I mean, I can share your slides. I guess I forgot to include them in the
No, I didn't provide any slides. That's why, because my update is going to take 90 seconds.
All right. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, ACME profiles. Really quick update. Thing number 1, in IETF 122, we decided there would be a working group call for adoption. That call for adoption never happened between last meeting and this one, so I am requesting that we do a call for adoption as we decided at that time. Thing number 2, this isn't represented in the draft yet. It's still mostly just an idea, seeking feedback on it. As we head towards a post-quantum world, people are interested in seeing if ACME profiles can be used for like potentially issuing multiple certificates out of a single order. For example, one that is a like classical algorithm and one that uses post-quantum keys and signatures, but otherwise have all the same identifiers and stuff like that in them. A few ideas have been bounced around what that might look like. I intend to put some stuff on the mailing list, but let me know if you have thoughts about what that should maybe look like. Yeah, that's it for profiles.
Okay, so thanks, Aaron. I'll just start off real quick now. This is about persistent DNS validation in ACME. The context, which I'll go over quite briefly, is that the traditional DNS-01 challenge requires a random token. So every time a client, puts in a new order, they need to have some sort of channel to a DNS provider to upload that random token. This is largely in production. We see a lot of use of these sort of magic CNAME values where you just put in one CNAME at one point in time, That authorizes a cloud provider to get certificates on your behalf. The cloud provider then essentially uploads the token to the CNAME. The interesting thing is that if you think about, what's the actual authorization that's coming from the DNS zone, it's no longer this kind of ephemeral one-time token that's being uploaded. It's actually just a single persistent value. Next slide. So essentially this sparked some activity at the CA browser forum. The long and the short of it is that the CA browser forum seems to be moving forward with a ballot called SC88, which would permit essentially a static TXT record to be used as a challenge to sign WebPKI certificates. Next slide. Yeah, so you can see the details here. And then the intent of this is to support automation. The ACME client no longer needs an online channel with a DNS provider. And there's some much better controls available in this than the sort of CNAME approach that's being used at cloud providers. Next slide. I won't go into all of these, but there are some pretty good reasons why if users are just uploading a static token, they should upload a real static, persistent challenge instead of just a CNAME. So the CAB forum is making progress on this, I think, given that many WebPKI CAs use ACME. I think it'd be really good to have an ACME validation method to support this around the same timing that the CAB forum might move this into a standards language. Next slide. So the draft that I put forward is super simple. It just uses the exact same syntax that the CAB form is looking at in the current draft of SC088. So as a result, my preference and the way it's written right now is this does not need to be another method at the CAB form because this syntax fully conforms to the syntax that they're proposing right now. And essentially you just put a TXT record at _validation-persist the domain you're validating .com. And then this TXT record looks a lot like a CAA issue tag. It has the certificate authority that's allowed to sign for your domain, and it has an account URI that identifies your ACME client. The certificate authority signs if that ACME client is asking for it. You can put multiple of these TXT records at the same label. They could authorize multiple CAs or multiple ACME clients. Next. In the ACME protocol, the proposal is sort of super simple. It's actually just taking information out. So it's just like the DNS01 challenge, but there is no token. I think it makes sense to still keep the flow of the ACME protocol exactly the same. So the ACME server responds saying, these are the challenges. The client says, I want to use DNS persist. And then tells the server when it's done. Although it's reasonable to expect that the client may not actually have to do any reconfiguration to satisfy this challenge, because what other user or system is running that client likely has already put that record in place and it just sits there. Next slide. I'm not going to go into the security considerations. I also got some comments that the DNS op working group already has a draft about validation that they're expanding to also include persistent domain control validation. But largely it converges to fairly similar security considerations to the existing DNS01 challenge. But there's this nice perk that now we don't need to have this extra system to solve DNS01 challenges through CNAMEs, and you also don't need to put a live DNS credential, on your ACME client. Next slide. Yeah, so I'd be happy to take any questions. I think there's still some language in the draft that's sort of being finalized maybe before any sort of standardization adoption. There's also considerations with the DNS op draft. And yeah, I'd just be happy to hear the thoughts of the working group on this.
I guess I'm first. So apologies that I'm going to be sending this over the end of our time, but this is good. We've basically already done something similar before with the Onion draft, which is taking something from the CA browser forum and putting it into ACME. So there is precedent of one for doing something like this, but this seems like a good idea. And I had a quick look through the draft, and it seems a fairly simple, transplanting operation that I have very little issues with the draft, other than copy editing and stuff. There's on the sending the challenge and then responding. There is actually no requirement to do that. We should define the challenge type for the case that the DNS record isn't there. But especially with when authorizations can be valid for longer than, they can be valid for a while, and it already exists with, say, certbot and Let's Encrypt. If you go through and get a certificate and then 5 minutes later request the same certificate again, the order will just immediately transition to validate it. So there's some implementation details here about not actually having to send the challenge back at all if, when the order is created, the CA goes and looks and sees, oh, this correct DNS record is here, and the clients can handle this.
So I will say there was a bit of a conversation in the CA browser forum list about this topic. I personally am of the opinion that sending the challenge back is the cleaner way to do this for a couple of reasons. You don't, as a CA, you don't know which clients want to use this challenge and which don't. So if you get in the habit of essentially checking everyone's order to see if this record exists before you actually send them back an authorization, you have a bit of overhead there. The other thing is, I personally think it's just a cleaner protocol to, adhere. It obviously, if the CA has a valid, non-expired authorization that it can reuse, it should reuse that. But personally, I think, exploiting this behavior where you don't have to send the authorization, although really there was a new authorization instance being created in this situation, I personally think it's cleaner. There is some conversation about those types of.
I accept that implementation-wise, that's fine, but I don't think it should be required to send it back in the.
Can we do this on the list?
Yes,
sure. Yeah, on list. Yeah.
Corey, quick.
Corey Bonnell, DigiCert. I'm really happy to see this work being brought forth here in this working group. We've been working on it at the CAB Forum now for the past couple of years, so definitely like to see this move forward here. One thing I will mention that there's someone at Shiloh at Fastly actually has a draft in GitHub. They haven't pushed it to the data tracker yet, but someone else has actually worked on it.
Yes, I've reviewed that draft. I didn't want to mention their name just because they hadn't mentioned in the working group, but yeah, I've been put in touch. I think the idea is just to align these two drafts. They're incredibly similar, so I think whatever happens, it'll sort of move forward in a consensus system.
Yeah, I think basically we should, combine efforts, but I think that, the existence of a second draft is all the more indication this is valuable work.
Eric? Sorry, we're over time, so go ahead.
Super fast. We should coordinate with the DCV draft going on in DNSOP because this overlaps with things that are in scope there. I think there are some details on this on sub accounts that I think will be important to work through if we want to make this deployable. And also, I think based on the analysis we did in DNSOP, this is probably not going to be a replacement for the CNAME thing. I think some of these intermediaries are going to keep needing to use the CNAME model, so we may need to find a way to make that be usable and safe.
Yeah.
So, and he put that in the chat too, right? So you can go back and read it in case it was too quick.
Yeah, I did hear that. I don't mean for this to replace the CNAME thing. Obviously, people will keep using that, and there may be some operational advantages. I think there's some situations where this turns out a lot cleaner than the CNAME technique.
Okay, thank you. So what do you say? There was another presentation. We're way over time, so I think I'll encourage everyone to read the draft and talk about it on the list. Sorry, Leaf, but we're really out of time. And next time I will ask for 2 hours. Hopefully we don't get into this situation. So thank you, everyone. And
thanks for coming.
Hope to see you in Montreal. Bye.